Okay, so welcome back. The cross-examination part is over. And I'm going to talk about Dill briefly and Dolphus Raymond, sort of a strange break right in the middle of this. But then the most important thing happens, and that is Atticus's closing arguments. It disturbs me when I hear people who have read To Kill a Mockingbird and that they say that they never discuss the closing arguments, because I don't understand the mindset of making people read something and then not discussing them, which is why I'm doing these courses, and I'm very grateful for the three of you watching. So, at any rate, okay, so Dill starts to cry, and you have to remember Dill is the sensitive child. Scout is not really sensitive as much. She will be later on, but things are still in her world. She hasn't quite reached that point where you really feel like you are walking in someone else's skin. But Dill's life has been a lot different, and he's been abandoned basically by his family. So, you know, he feels things more keenly, more strongly. And he would have been a more sensitive kid anyway, since that was just his disposition. And he doesn't understand exactly how to articulate it, but there's something that doesn't set him right about the way that Mr. Gilmer is talking to Tom Robinson. Now, of course, we can look at it now and say it's terrible, but at the time, it took a child to point that out. And a lot of times children do point things out. That I remember first time my son walked in when I was watching The Help, and I think he was about maybe 9 or 10, I can't remember, but he was just so upset. He was just like, why are they doing this? What's happening? What, you know? And it's this innocence that, you know, he had, and it's that innocence hasn't been broken yet. And this is what Raymond Dolphus says to Dill, essentially, is that, you know, the children can see it, but you wait till you've been around in the world enough and you won't cry at it anymore. And in a way, that's kind of a terrible thing to say, but think about what this book is about. Since it's told with a child narrator, it's about innocence. And so it also has to be about the loss of innocence. And the loss of innocence comes with that coming of age moment when you realize that the world isn't like you thought it was. And that's where you become a little more, I guess, stoic, as Dolphus is saying to Dill. And he also is doing an interesting thing. They think that he is the town drunk. And he also is an outsider because he chooses to live among black people. He's married to a black woman. He has mixed children. They go on with their lives very privately, and we find out that when he offers Dill a drink, he's not offering him alcohol. It's just Coca-Cola. But he's, you know, presenting himself as if he is, you know, a drunk, just by putting the bottle in a paper bag and acting that way. And this really confuses Scout. Why would you do that? And I'm paraphrasing, but Dolphus says, you know, if they're going to think I'm nuts, may as well give them something to hold on to. So then, you know, maybe they won't take it personally. He's actually doing it for other people. You know, to give them a reason. Give them a reason to think I'm crazy for wanting to, that I prefer, you know, my black wife to, you know, maybe your white one. And then, because otherwise they would think, well, you're not in step with the rest of us. Why aren't you doing what everyone else is doing? And so it's kind of this strange break in the case in the moment, but I think it's also Harper Lee's way of catching us up and reminding us that this is a coming of age story. And it's also showing a different side of a character in the town that they're not all like that. You know, there are a few people, but of course they have to be the weird ones who aren't part of the group. And it reminds me, just because a lot of people have never heard of this, I like to bring it up. There's a group of monks that were called Fools for Christ. And, you know, in a monastic life, what would happen is sometimes with asceticism, they would become, you know, maybe healers in a way. Maybe they would be clairvoyant or something like that. They would get a reputation. People would follow them. And they would become like celebrities. So that would ruin the whole idea of a monastic practice, right? So what they would do is they would act crazy. They would act like they were fools, so that people would just think they're nuts and not think they're holy men. And I just think that's kind of interesting. Anyways, let's get to Atticus's closing arguments as they go back in. And Jim, this is also, you know, a coming of age story for Jim too, because Jim really thinks they got him. We're going to win. So Atticus starts with gentlemen, and he's addressing the jury. Jim and I looked at each other. Atticus might have said, Scout. His voice had lost its aridity, its detachment, and he was talking to the jury as if they were post office, they were folks on the post office corner. There again, he's establishing this is the ethos, the credibility, man to man. There wasn't any women on the jury, obviously, but anyways, he's on there. He's saying you're on my level. He's not talking down to them, as it might be another lawyer's temptation to do, is to remember who I am, and I'm going to tell you. It's not Atticus's style. Gentlemen, he was saying, I shall be brief, but I'd like to use the remaining time with you to remind you that this case is not a difficult one. It requires no minute sifting of complicated facts, but it does require you to be sure, beyond reasonable doubt, as to the guilt of the defendant. To begin with, this case should have never come to trial. This case is as simple as black and white. The state has produced not one iota of medical evidence to the effect that the crime Tom Robinson is charged with ever took place. He's relied upon testimony of two witnesses whose evidence has not only been called into serious question on cross-examination, but it's been flatly contradicted by the defendant. The defendant is not guilty, but someone in this courtroom is. I have nothing but pity in my heart for the chief witness, for the state, but my pity does not extend so far as to put a man's life at stake. What she has done in an effort to get rid of her own guilt. I say guilt, gentlemen, because it was guilt that motivated her. She's committed no crime. She's merely broken a rigid and time-honored code of our society, a code so severe that whoever breaks it is hounded to live in the mist and seen unfit to live with. She's a victim of cruel poverty and ignorance. But I cannot pity her. She is white. She knew full well the enormity of her offense, and because her desires were stronger than the code she was breaking, she persisted in breaking it. She persisted. Her subsequent reaction is something all of us have known at one time or another. She did something every child has done. She tried to put the evidence behind her. But in this case, it was no child hiding a stolen contraband. She struck out at her victim. Of necessity, she must put him away from her. He must be removed from her presence. From this world, she must destroy the evidence of her offense. What is the evidence of her offense? Tom Robinson, a human being. She must put Tom Robinson away from her. Tom Robinson was a daily reminder of what she did. And what did she do? She tempted a Negro. She was white, and she tempted a Negro. She did something that in our society is unspeakable. She kissed a black man. Not an old uncle, but a strong young Negro man. No code mattered to her before she broke it, but came crashing down on her afterwards. Her father saw it. And the defendant has testified to his remarks. What did her father do? We don't know, but there is circumstantial evidence to indicate that Mayella Ewell was beaten savagely by someone who led almost exclusively with his left. We do know in part what Mr. Ewell did. He did what any God-fearing man would do. Under the circumstances, he swore out a warrant, no doubt signing it with his left hand. And Tom Robinson now sits before you, having taken oath with the only good hand he possesses. And so a quiet, respectable, humble Negro who had the unmitigated temerity to feel sorry for a white woman has to put his word up against two white people's. I need not mind you the conduct, the appearance of the witnesses for the state. With the exception of the sheriff of Macomb County, they have presented themselves to you gentlemen, to this court, in the cynical confidence that their testimony would not be doubted. Confident that you gentlemen would go on about them on your assumption, the evil assumption, that all Negroes lie, that all Negroes are basically immoral beings, that all Negro men are not to be trusted with our women, an assumption one associates with the minds of their caliber, which, gentlemen, we all know in itself a lie as black as Tom Robinson's skin. A lie I do not have to point out to you. You know the truth, and the truth is this. Some Negroes lie. Some Negroes are immoral. Some Negro men are not to be trusted with our women, black or white. But this is a truth that applies to the human race and to no particular race of men. There's not a person in this courtroom who has never told a lie, who has never done an immoral thing. There's no man living who's never looked upon a woman with desire. Atticus paused and took out his handkerchief. Then he took off his glasses and wiped them. And we saw another first. We've never seen him sweat. He was one of those men whose faces never perspired, but now was shining tan. One more thing, gentlemen, before I quit. Thomas Jefferson once said that all men were created equal, a phrase that the Yankees and the distaff of the executive branch in Washington are fond at hurling at us. There is a tendency in this year of grace of 1935 for certain people to use this phrase out of context to satisfy all conditions. The most ridiculous example I can think of is that the people who run the public education promote the stupid and the idle along with the industrious. Because all men are created equal, educators will gravely tell you the children left behind suffer terrible feelings of inferiority. We know all men are not created equal. Some are smarter than others. Some people have more opportunity because they're born with it. Some people make more money than others. Some ladies make better cakes than others. Some people are born gifted beyond the normal scope of most men. But there is one way in this country in which all men are created equal. There is one human institution that makes the pauper the equal of a Rockefeller and the stupid man the equal of an Einstein, and the ignorant man the equal of any college president. And that institution, gentlemen, is a court. It could be the Supreme Court of the United States or the humblest JP court in the land or the honorable court in which you serve. Our courts have their faults as any human institution, but in this country, our courts are the great levelers. And in our courts, all men are created equal. I'm no idealist to believe firmly in the integrity of our courts, and the justice system. That's no ideal to me. That is a living, working reality. Gentlemen, a court is no better than each of you sitting before me on this jury. A court is only as sound as its jury, and a jury is only as sound as the men who make it up. I'm confident that you gentlemen will review without passion the evidence you're about to hear and come to a decision and restore this defendant to his family. In the name of God, do your duty. Atticus' voice had dropped and turned away from the jury. He had said something I didn't catch, and once more to himself than the court. I punched Jim. What did he say? In the name of God, believe him. I think that's what he said. Dill suddenly reached over and tugged at Jim. Look yonder. We followed his finger with sinking hearts. Calpurnia was making her way up the middle aisle, walking straight towards Atticus. Okay, so Atticus makes a very interesting argument. He actually says that people are not created equal. That we're not. That we are all, we all have different talents, we all have different gifts, but it's not like it was all just given to us equally, brains, some people are better at this, some people are better at that. And that's just the way it is. But, and here's the most important claim of the whole thing. In this court, this system is designed to make it equal. That's what they're here for. Why else? Why else go to all the other trouble of, having the order, like I said, in the courtroom? It's for a purpose. And he's trying to tell these men that you are serving this purpose. This isn't about race, because Atticus isn't going to win on race. He's not going to get people to open up their hearts and suddenly not be racist. They're not going to care about that. What they could possibly care about, though, is their patriotic duty. So it's a very smart move. It's a very smart, there is the emotion. He even, says in the name of God, people, and it is emotional, but it's extremely rational. That you cannot convict someone if you have a reasonable doubt, even one. And they've given more than that. So now it's going to have to really come down to, truth and God, or culture and society. And so you can guess who wins. Oh, there's my dog. All right, I'm going to stop here. Bye.